I think it's really important to not, sound like, the old guy that's up on his porch yelling at everybody to get off their grass. I mean, I'm very accepting of change and always have been, and I tend to roll with it. Now, obviously some things can impact our business negatively, and that doesn't mean you have to openly embrace them and throw a party about it, but we have to accept that, all businesses change, all industries change, and we've been through several pretty radical ones. Again, when I started my first internship, there were newspapers in every community, so it was very
Mm.
easy to find that entry level position to show what I was capable of, and then that internship literally led to the same at the same newspaper to my first full-time job. And it was a small community newspaper where you learn how to do everything. And that really, really set me up well for my future as a freelancer because, boy, you had to go out and shoot a portrait, then you had to go out and shoot a high school sports game. And then if the fire department had a fire they were responding to, suddenly your editors are telling you to race out to a fire. And you had to really learn how to navigate everything quickly. Those were the film days. And um, once I left newspapers and I went into magazines, I wanted to start freelancing for the magazines. And I worked my way up through newspapers and spent, about 5 years as a contract photographer at the LA Times. And I gained invaluable experience with all of that. The next level for me wanted to be uh, seeing if I can make it into, working with Time and Newsweek and Sports Illustrated and all those. And it took a push, and I had to get on a plane and go show my face in person, which I think is a important point these days. I do talk about it with students in my workshop and so forth that the digital connection is fantastic. It's a great tool. It's an evolutionary tool that I didn't have when I was starting my freelance career. So I take advantage of it and I love it. But that doesn't mean that we necessarily throw away all the tools that were available to us prior. And I think one of the ways to really set yourself apart as a freelancer, as somebody that's trying to build a client base, is to meet as many people in person as possible. So at that time, when I was building my clientele, you got on a plane and you flew to New York and you flew to DC and you went to places where a lot of the publications that I wanted to shoot for and some foundations and so forth that hire photojournalists were located. And you make a lot of cold calls, and the a majority of them for me would eventually lead into assignment work, but not all of them. And sometimes it took
Mhm.
several visits. So I think that's one way in which things used to be, which has been for the most part discarded. Um, for the majority of photographers don't really consider that a necessary step. Again, take what is useful and use, add your own. But I do firmly believe that when you meet somebody, because as freelancers, here's a key component. You're going to represent a publication, a company, a foundation, whoever, for a short period of time, whether it's for a 1 hour assignment, a few days of an assignment, or whatever. And I think that editors can get a pretty good feel for your, ease of being around people, the thing that the skill set we need to take meaningful, impactful photographs that go beyond the surface of something.
Mhm.
And if they can determine that through sitting with you over coffee or something, I think that's a really beneficial thing to take advantage of. And then to go into the technical side, the freelance world has really changed because when I really started freelancing, we were shooting, especially for the magazines, you shoot slide film. And again, I mentioned this before, where you have to be very technically proficient. And the
Mhm.
reason that's so important is you would ship your film to your client, oftentimes unprocessed. And if your exposure's in fast moving situations where you're going inside and outside and into fluorescent lights where you had to screw on 30 magenta filters onto your lens to balance out the fluorescence, if you weren't, proficient at that, then they got the film at the other end and they'd throw them into a trash can because yeah, from the light table to the trash can, and you're probably not going to get hired again. With
Mhm.
the technological innovations with digital, a lot of that is not even thought of anymore. Whether you're shooting on program or an aperture priority or even a manual, you can really mess up your exposures and throw them into Lightroom, and it's going to adjust everything beautifully, and
Yeah.
your clients are never going to know one thing. So that that ability to do that opened up the pool of photographers out there tremendously. In the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which I look at frequently for, my workshop, does bring that specific fact into play for why there are so many photographers. The entry level is very low now, given
Mm.
the technology available at our fingertips.
Mhm.